So now it's time for, yet again, more speeches. Who has eaten well? Fantastic food, wasn't it? Don't worry, Matt, I warmed them up. Matt Bryan.
Good evening, revellers and merrymakers. For those who don't know me, I'm Matt. I'm Pat's younger, better-looking brother, and also his best man. I'd like to start tonight with a few thank yous. So first and foremost, a big thank you to Livy and Patrick, but mainly Livy, for making today the unique and special wedding it's been so far. Sorry, there's a fire on the floor. Did Dad put you up to that? No, I thought he might. Beyond that, I'd like to put a big thanks out to Nick and Gloriana, Livy's parents, and my mum and dad, Kathy and John, for all their help along the way. And also... a massive thanks to the bridal party, and this was the only bit of my speech that I could not learn for the life of me, honestly. There's too many people. So here we go. From Charlie, Rach, Liv, Duco, Chef, Kira, Alice, me, Joe, Ben, Tom, Sam, Sai and Rich for all their help along the way as well. So, me and Patrick, we've been brothers now for a little over 26 years, but our relationship, it didn't get off to the best of starts. I gate crashed his third birthday in spectacular fashion, and instead of a Nintendo Game Boy, he was faced with a screaming baby brother. And he had to share his birthday from there on in, and he's never forgiven me since. So, from that day on, Patrick took his job as a brother very seriously. He did what was expected of him. So he beat me up, blamed me for everything he ever broke, and embarrassed me in front of everyone at every opportunity. And this speech, it was my opportunity for revenge. It was my opportunity to embarrass him in front of every single person he knows. But alas, Livy's given me the strictest instructions to keep things PG. It really doesn't leave me with much. So I can't tell you about the fancy dress party that got out of hand. I definitely can't tell you about the time he made headlines on New Year's Day. I wouldn't even dream about bringing up the time he woke up, shoeless in grease, covered in cuts head to toe. I don't think birth makes people brothers. It may make people siblings, but I think brotherhood is something that is forged growing up together. So I was there to witness Patrick growing up. He started as a really smarmy, small child. He was kind of geeky. He used to bully me a lot, what can I say? And then he progressed into a grunger, and then an emo complete with pink fringe and piercings all over, and then a raver, and then finally the steampunk gentleman he is today. And there's a lot of change over those years, but no more so than since he'd met Livy. I was there in the heady summer of 2012 when Patrick first met Livy, and it was quite clear he was obvious. It was clear and obvious, should I say, that he was serious about this one from the start. He even started cleaning his teeth. But in all seriousness, Livy is somewhat of a miracle worker. She's got Patrick listening to jazz, enjoying theatre, and he's even swapped out his diet of microwave pizzas for vegetarian fare. And despite all of this, I've never seen him happier. So, Livy, you're the Khaleesi to the Carl. You're the Damaji Ting to the Shah Damakar. You're the Princess Leia to the Han Solo. And I can honestly think of no one better, no one more worthy that I'd rather join our family. So I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet, and without further ado, I'd like you all to be upstanding. I'd like you to raise your glasses to life, love, laughter, and happily ever after to the coolest couple south of the river, Patrick and Livy.
Yay! Cheers.
Awesome.
And of course, the best man, everybody. For lovely words. So, up next, this man I asked about 10 minutes ago whether he was ready for his speech, and his response to me was, listen son, I was born ready. So let's heap a little bit more pressure. He's a man that needs no introduction. Mr. Brian.
Don't mess it up. Well, Peter Pan has married Wendy. The boy that wouldn't grow up has grown up. And he has a certificate, a marriage certificate, to prove it. Now, we could refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. Bryan, but that would be somewhat old-fashioned and probably unacceptable in these more enlightened times. Gender definitive. So, we young people like to combine the names of the couples. So, for example, famously, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie became Brangelina. So, for example, if the bride and groom, or broom, were called, say, Wendy and Frank, we would call them Friendy. Pam and Rick. Ram. And of course, William and Millie. Milliam. But from this day, henceforth, in God's eyes, Patrick and Livy are now called Pivi. And what God has coupled together, let no man put asunder. Now, when we first met Livy, well, I remember particularly a walk we did, as we used to do, with the dog, to a pub. This walk took 45 minutes, and during that walk, Patrick and Livy vehemently discussed the socio-economic model that was the Disney film Monsters, Inc. And the general conclusion of that 45-minute discussion was that the economic model that was the one industry economic model thing, and that was the electric generating industry, if you know the film, was unsustainable. It was unsustainable for a society of multi-eyed, multi-tentacled, multi-coloured, occasionally hairy monsters. Cartoon monsters at that. And I thought at the time, these two are made for each other. Call them soulmates. Call them star-crossed lovers. And star-crossed lovers is a phrase recently used by Prince Harry before the recent royal wedding. And I think you'll agree there are many similarities between the royal couple, or Hagen, as we like to say, and Pivi. Livy, for example, has Meghan's charm, grace, Hollywood good looks. Whereas Patrick has Prince Harry's dubious parentage. Let me explain. There comes a point in any man's life where a word or a deed and that little voice at the back of your head says, "Is this child mine?" And I'm sure if anyone has brought up teenagers, that little voice has said, "Is this child human?" But that voice spoke to me after a conversation that we had a couple of Christmases ago. Patrick, in his usual, humble, self-deprecating manner, was telling me that he was brilliant at nearly everything. But there was two things that he wasn't brilliant at. Now, I thought at the time, my son, not brilliant at two things? Hardly believable. But number one on the I'm not so brilliant list was cooking. Now, I am no master chef, but I can make a spaghetti bolognese just as good as any other man. I know that spaghetti isn't cooked under the grill now. Although it has to be said, if they don't intend you to cook it under the grill, why do they make it in that shape? If they want you to cook it in a pan, why don't they make it in pan-shaped? Italians, what do they like? But I thought, he's young, he will learn. No, it was the second thing on the I'm not so brilliant list that made that voice in my head shout and let off a number of klaxons. And that second thing was karaoke. Now, when Prince Harry went to his father and said, Dad, why am I not balding and blonde like my brother? Well, Prince Charles could delve back into history and say, well, son, you're a throwback. For wasn't Henry VIII ebullient and a people's person and ginger, much like yourself? I unfortunately didn't have that luxury, for I know, and it is a fact, that my father, his father, and his father's father were all quite brilliant at karaoke. So,
Sing us a song! That's music to me.
please. So as you see, the evidence is fairly damning. And let's face it, look at us. Can you see any physical resemblance at all? Seriously? But I brought this boy up as my son. And I have to say, I am a proud father sitting here. You like sincerity, right? Okay. And if I can borrow a phrase that I think sums it all up from the film Babe, all I can say is, that'll do, son. That'll do. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, when will these fatuous ramblings of a senile old bloke end? And on that note, I would like you to raise your glasses, and I have to say that that gets a hell of a laugh at the optician's Christmas ball. Every year, we laugh at it. And I think you'll join me in keeping the general theme of the event in wishing Patrick and Lavi...
Oh, you nearly done it! Oh, retake.
I'm sure we all wish that they live long and prosper. Raise your glasses, I give you Pivi!
Well, that was quite something. does show that the pressure gets to the best of us when we call the bride Labby. There we go. I'll tell you what, I'm glad I'm not going next anyway. On that note, we've got one more speaker this evening. Of course, it's one of the special guests. Not the most special, the second most special. Isn't that right, Libby? Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the floor your groom, Patrick Bryan.
Hi guys, my name's Patrick and I'll be your compere for today. That's a tough act to follow, right? It's pretty lucky that I hadn't prepared too much for my speech because, you know, my father went before me, my brother went before me, all the low-hanging fruits have already been picked. We included Ben in the ceremony, who stole my How I Met Livy story. Thanks, Ben. Thanks a lot, Ben. You told it really well. You told it really well. Matthew obviously read out the programme to thank everybody, so that's like 5 minutes of a usual groom speech. I would like to make some special thanks, which are slightly more targeted than Matthew's. Thank you, Rachel, for the cake. Thank you, Rachel. There are little cats underneath that are made of wood that represent my cats and Livy's cats, and that's excellent. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank the people who read in the ceremony. Ben, you did a really good job. Annie, you did a really good job, and Richard, you far exceeded my expectations, honestly. Livy and I chose that reading and thought we could fiddle around with it a little bit, but we had someone else in mind, and we showed it to Richard, and he said, I want it. And we said, okay, you can audition over Skype in a week. And he came back and he filled it with pop culture references, and he got the part really quickly. It was excellent. Although we did have to cut a fair few things from that version that Richard said at that point. I'd also like to thank Steve-O, Tom Stevens. I was a groomsman at Steve-O's wedding, and he has really topped me off at my wedding as the celebrant. I mean, you'd think he did it for a job, right? We tried to get Steve a really expensive priest stole, and there is actually quite a big market for those things, especially in America where religion is a bit more of a business. But they all cost about £250 each. They're these beautiful things with rainbows. So I ended up finding a LARPing shop, which is live action role playing. So Steve-O was our celebrant as a elven wizard. Thank you very much, Steve-O. Obviously, I'd like to thank all my groomsmen. Every one of them has been fantastic. Matthew, Joe, my father, you've all been excellent, honestly, guys. It's been a real heartwarming thing. All the bridesmaids as well, they've all done their own parts. You know, I could go through it, but we've only, you know, we're pushed for time and we want dessert. My parents, guys, honestly, I mean, Dad, you obviously missed your vocation. You should have been a stand-up. And Mum, that table board is so fantastic, honestly, it's so fantastic. Nick and Gloriana, thank you so much for welcoming me. I've really tried my best. When I first met Nick and Gloriana, they were overheard saying that Patrick, he's alright, but he dresses like a teenager, doesn't he? And, you know, I saw their point, honestly. So I've been secretly putting together this hipster wardrobe because I thought that a hipster was a bit more socially acceptable than all the things that Matthew described that I've been earlier. And this is the apotheosis of it now, so what do you think, guys? Like I said, I didn't write this speech because I assumed that most of my jokes would get stolen. I've got one story that I would like to tell, which was after Livy and I we had a talk about getting married, and sort of decided, like, yeah, we'd go for it. And I said, all right, let's do it properly. Just give me some time. I'll get myself ready. I'll buy a ring. I'll do all of that stuff. Just forget about it for now. And I wanted to do it properly, so I wanted to ask her father's permission beforehand, which is a tradition that I don't know how many people do these days, honestly, but I found it really difficult to get him alone. They only live 10 minutes walk from our house, and he's on holiday all the time. You know, we're really busy. And then the absolute perfect opportunity came when I was going to see his friends in Lincolnshire, who sadly couldn't be here today. And he phoned us up and he said, Pat and Livy, get me 20 kilograms of potatoes, all right? Don't ask any questions, just get me them. So we went out and got this bag, which is a lot bigger than I thought it would be. Put it in the boot. We were going home. Libby was like, oh, should we just go drop those potatoes round to Dan's house? I was like, no, I'm really tired. I'm really, really tired. I need to go home to go to bed. And then lightning did strike twice in the same place, because then he rang me up and said, Patrick, I need some tech support. And I knew I was in. So I went round, asked his permission, he said yes, thank goodness. And then we've made it here, and we've had a year to put together this, and honestly, I can't claim credit for very much of it. Livy's mostly presented me with 3 fully realised plans for every single option that I could have picked. I said that one, and she said why, and I said I like it. And then she's put it together. I've left all of my stuff till absolutely the last minute. I've done okay. It's kind of slapdash like this speech. You know, if you're the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed maybe the literary theme to the occasion, and we like stories, Livy and I. And now it's time for us to write our story together. So, Livy, my love, you know, you are the other half that I was really needed when I was a teenager. You know, my father has spoken about it. Everybody's spoken about it a bit, really. Anyone that knew me back then. I'm sure the scars will have healed at some point. But I'd scrub up good, right? You know, you're consoling when I can be callous. You're calm when I can be a bit spunky. And you're certainly organised when I can be a scatterbrain. So, you know, I'm really excited, Livy, so that we can write our story together, Shade of My Heart. If everybody could please be upstanding. To the love of my life, my moon and stars, my leafy sprite, Olivia Fleur Goodwin Page Bryan. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. I'm having the most amazing time. I'm so proud. There's so many of you as well. I had no idea that I knew so many people. Thank you so much, everybody. I love you.
Goodbye. Well, that was Brian time, the life of Brian, wasn't it? Fantastic. Thank you to the 3 Brians for those words.
Right, none of you guys.